What's up, everybody? This is Albert. He, him, his pronouns, and we're back with another video series for my project Raising Souls. So this book for the week is going to be Assata Shakur's Assata, an autobiography. So this is going to be a video series in parts because this is a lot to get through. So, give you a background from Assata Shakur, and she was former Black Panther Party member, and she was a member of the Black Liberation Army after she left the Black Panther Party. And there was this altercation with New Jersey police in the New Jersey Turnpike, where there was shootings that were going on, and she was arrested and all that stuff because a police officer and another member of the Black Liberation Army, they were murdered. So she was charged for accomplishing a murder of the New Jersey state trooper. And she went through the trial, and she apparently broke out of prison and ended up in Cuba. So she's alive to this day and in Cuba. And so she's like a political prisoner and everything. And she gave this autobiography, and it was published, I forgot, I think it was the 1980s. It was like not long after she was in Cuba. But yeah, she's a phenomenal activist, and she's a good writer too. Like, this is like a good book that introduces you to Black liberation struggles that were going on in the 1970s in particular, because it was talking about the Black Panther Party, Richard Nixon, the state-sanctioned violence that happened through FBI and COINTELPRO, and everything else. And she's pretty much talking about, this is a political autobiography, so it's pretty much talking about how she learned about Black radicalism and revolutionary ideologies and all that stuff. So we can go on ahead. So chapter 1 starts off with the aftermath of the New Jersey Turnpike shootout, when she was injured, like badly injured after that shootout. Like, she couldn't feel, I think it was her arm. She was shot too. Like, I think there was a bullet that got too close to her lung. And clavicles. Like, it was so horrible what she went through. And then she was talking about the observations that were going on in the aftermath, like the police officers that came to the scene. Like, a lot of them, she was talking about what they were talking about, and she thinks she was gonna die within seconds of the crime scene. And then she was talking about all of the stuff that police officers were talking about in the turnpike, and it was such such language. Like, one of the officers says, "Nah, let her lay in the gutter where she belongs, just get her out of the way, so we ought to finish her off." And it was pretty much what you would think this is something that's going on as of recent, with all the police killings of Black people and pretty much police brutality and all that stuff. And pretty much sees Black people as disposable and not as human beings. So that's pretty much the highlights of of what's going on in that part of the chapter. And then she was taken to the Middlesex County Hospital in New Jersey, and she was talking about how she was interrogated by police officers because she was a political prisoner. Like, she was under the FBI watch even before the shooting. So there was a lot of police officers in the hospital, and they even took her to this suite called the Johnson Suite, which is like the privilege suite because she's pretty known and she had like some status before the shootout, and she was pretty much interrogated by not even just the security, the police officers, but she was also treated horribly by the doctors. Like some of the people that were surrounding her, they were it was so traumatic. Like it talks about like the medical racism that Black women go through. Like they're literally treated like, I wouldn't say dogs, because dogs need to be treated better than that, but like literally she wasn't treated like a human being. She wasn't treated like a patient. She was like seen as garbage and stuff like that. Like they were putting their fingers on her eyes to see if she could see or something, and she thought she was going to go blind. And what else they were doing to her? They keep poking her body, and it's like a horror scene that was like, I can't imagine even being in that position. And yeah, she was pretty much talking about her experience being in that hospital after the shootout. And a lot of the officers were harassing her and pretty much talking about who was it? Zaid. Because she was with two other people when she was in the Turnpike, and one of them was Zaid, and Zaid died during the shootout. And she saw Zaid's body in the hospital, and there was a plastic bag over him. And one of the officers said, "That's going to be you eventually." So pretty much trying to threaten. They're pretty much threatening her. And she said even during the conversations that she heard when police officers were talking to each other or to her, one of them said that they were a World War II veteran, and they said they fought on the wrong side of the war. A lot of the police officers were literally Nazis. And another police officer told her, like, Black people are just jealous of what white people have. Like, white people invented classical music and all the mythologies that white supremacy put on Black people. Like, white people literally created genocide in order to make the United States and enslavement of African people. And it's like literally reaffirms like the United States. Racism is literally embedded into the DNA of the United States. And you'll be a fool even if some of the police officers don't believe that, because they're agents of the state and they have to enforce whatever the state legislates. They have to enforce. They have to do violence where they see fit, and it's under the discretion of police officers. And racism can be verification for that discretion. And yeah, that's literally goes into the new Jim Crow that Michelle Alexander was talking about. And yeah, she was, even in her hospital bed, the officers were harassing her because she was in the Johnson suite. So she was in that suite for protection. So for protection from Black political, from Black liberationists and stuff like that. So enemies of the state is something that they're trying to protect her from in the Johnson suite, because the police officers, they were literally trying to get her out. They literally were about to kill her if it wasn't for the Black nurses that were there. Like, the Black nurses were her saving grace when she was in the hospital, and they even gave her some books that try to take care of her. Like, they gave her a lot of Black poems. They gave her I think Claude McKay's If We Must Die, some other poetry that stimulated her mind from the situation that she was in. And then she eventually reunited with, and she was in a hospital for a while. She eventually reunited with her Aunt Evelyn, who was also her lawyer, and her mom and her sister. And even before her mom and sister, she was literally told the charges that were up against her after the shootout. Like she was charged for accomplishing a murder, charged for a bank robbery, they gave her like all these charges, and she don't even know, she couldn't even remember all the charges that they were given. And she was trying to say I need my lawyer present with me, her Aunt Evelyn, to give me some advice. And they were saying like that's not necessary. They were literally violating her rights as she was in her hospital bed. And it's like, the United States literally didn't care about Black people even after slavery and Jim Crow days, because this was the 70s and stuff like that. Like after the civil rights movement, after Dr. King fought for the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and all that stuff, and then he got assassinated by white supremacy in the government, and here we are in this. You wonder why you didn't learn about this until you read Assata's autobiography. And then after the harassment by the officers and agents of the state, she eventually reunited with her Aunt Evelyn, her mom, and her sister. And then her Aunt Evelyn said they had to get a court order in order to visit Assata. So it's hard for her to get visits from the family and stuff like that. Like they literally had to get a court order, and it was 5 minutes per person to visit Assata. So she didn't get that much time to spend with her family as she was trying to recover from her injuries from the shootout. So that was it from chapter 1. I don't know, and I can see any quotes that stuck out to me. She was talking about her experience here during the hospital. She was saying, I'm thinking about living, about surviving, thinking about what is going to happen next. And what else? Yeah, talking about the Nazi officers and pretty much neglecting her rights. Oh, that was it. Yeah, so she always starts with she always starts each chapter, well, not start each and end with each chapter, but she always has these poems throughout the book, which were, I don't know if she wrote these when she was in prison, but they were poems and just generic writings that that were on her mind. And yeah, pretty much gives her a humanizing piece that she's an artist as well. Like, this is something she didn't ask for. She wished she could just be in a spirit of joy and happiness, and the state does whatever it takes to rid her of her humanity and her joy and happiness. And that was the end of chapter 1. So then we get into chapter 2. So she alternates simultaneously at the same time. She alternates the time where she was preparing for her trials after the shootout, and her childhood and her upbringing and how she get into Black liberation politics. So chapter 2 talks about her upbringing, talks about her family, and she has a sister named Beverly, and talks about how even before she established her name as Assata Shakur, she was known as JoAnne Chesimard during her childhood and her younger days. And she was talking about being raised by her grandparents, and when her mom was there in the house sometimes, because her mom was going in school trying to become a teacher, and her parents were divorced after Ashata and her sister were born. So I don't think she really got to see her father. I don't know if she even really knew her, but she was raised mainly primarily by her grandparents. And she was talked about how she was raised. Like her grandparents told her not to take any BS. Pick your head up when you speak to people. Show people that you have dignity, and yeah, present yourself well wherever you go. Like people, it's always this perception approach to how she was raised. Like even to the extent to her hair, because she had nappy hair, and her grandma was trying to straighten her hair. So this good hair, bad hair discourse that's going on in Black communities because of what white supremacy told us what is considered good and bad hair. And she was also talking about the respectability politics that that her grandparents instilled in her, like this idea of what is considered decent children and alley rats. So the alley rats are the children that are just chilling. There's these ideas that they're lazy because they're not working and stuff like that. And it's a classist an analogy that is instilled in Shada. Like she couldn't even know. So these decent children are pretty much people that were raised by doctors, lawyers, preachers, like the figureheads in the Black community that they're not always giving us the right answers. And she was talking about how she was with this considered decent boy that her grandma thinks she should be around, and this boy was literally sexually harassing her. And yeah, Ashata said, becoming somebody in life just didn't mean too much to me. I wanted to feel happy, to feel good. And little did my grandmother know that ain't was my favorite word once I got 2 feet out of her hearing range. My grandmother had a little alley rat right under her roof, and she didn't even know it. Alley rats supposedly lived in alleys and rundown shacks, but my grandmother would often call one of my friends an alley rat, even if the kid didn't live in an alley. So pretty much talks about her relationships and stuff like that. And she talks about her grandparents' work ethic and the family, the lineage that she was a part of. Like she had a history of family members owning things, like they were owning lands, and a lot of them were Cherokee Indians of heritage and stuff like that. So it's pretty much that history that was passed down to her. And she was talking about before that, she said, I didn't care what kind of house my friends had or whether or not they lived in alleys. All that mattered was whether I liked them. I was convinced them, and I'm still convinced, that in some things, kids have a lot more sense than adults. So it literally tells you about the parents and child dynamics that even Black people internalize. About the parents try to establish this authoritarian behavior and try to be a guidance to children, and then the children, a lot of traumas came out of that authoritarian approach when they try to navigate through society, and how that can damage them in the end. Like they had to suppress a lot of emotions, a lot of their authenticity to confide to what white supremacy instilled in Black communities. And then Shakur went into the lineage of her family's ownerships, And she said, after slavery, many black people refused to use the last names of their masters. They called themselves freemen instead. And she said, she'd be descendants of a lot of black people that were free from slavery. And I wonder if that has anything to do with black people right now who they have ancestors that weren't free until Emancipation Proclamation, and I wonder if that contributed to a lot of trauma that were in them, because a lot of black people, they had traumas because of the South, and it tells you about the importance of Southern roots and stuff like that, because it's like, why be afraid of your roots and at the same time not having to face the trauma of slavery during that was in the South. So I think that's also interesting introspective that can be had in discourse. And yeah, she was, and then her grandparents, they owned a beach, and she was talking about how that work ethic they instilled in her. They had her working in the beach. Like, they had like food stands and tables and everything. Like, it looked like a nice beach. And she was talking about the people that come to the beach. And, they're talking about how the beach was probably like a safe haven for the black people. And, not even just in North Carolina. They lived in North Carolina at the time, but there were black people that were coming from South Carolina, Virginia. There were churches, school groups, and clubs that were going to that beach. And she talked about having a sense of community that was going on when she was working in the beach. And yeah, she talked about what else she talked about? She talked about the racism that was going on, because there was these I forgot if I don't think they were officers, but they were probably Ku Klux Klan members that, without their sheets, they were literally harassing the beach workers and stuff like that. And it came to the point where her grandmother tried to do things to prohibit night customers. Like, it got to that extreme that the white people were bothering them. And then when she was trying to put up a sign, there was this white person, probably they said looks like a redneck or something, and this white person told her to let her in the beach, and her grandma said, "No, this is my beach, I own it, and you shouldn't come any closer." And this white man had the audacity to say, "Come on now, auntie, I got a mammy in my house. Now open the gate and let me turn around." And then Ashada's grandmother said, "What you say now? I don't care how many mammies you got in your house. I don't care if you got 100 mammies in your house. You're going to back out of here tonight. And I want you off of my property now, right now." So even though this respectability politics that Ashada was raised, and she said that Ashada should be able to stand her ground too. And that inspired Ashada and to take no BS from white people, and know that racism was bad and they shouldn't be tolerated. And then she even talked about how, I think it was during Jim Crow segregation and stuff, so black people couldn't go to the beaches that white people go to. Like, in the white beaches, they have like piers, carnivals, festivals, and stuff like that, and amusement parks and theme parks that black people weren't able to go to. And Ashada talked about how she always wanted to go to those type of places. Like, she would try whatever she can do to go to those rides, because you're a child and you're young and you want to do things like go to amusement parks. You want to have memories. And her mom eventually took her to was it a zoo or something? Like, she went to a zoo. it was either her mom or her grandma, but her mom took her to this theme park, and they were trying to purchase tickets, and the clerk, the ticket booth person, like said, you're not allowed to get tickets. And it got to the point where her mom said, no, we're going to be buying, you're going to give us, we're going to give you our money, and we should have a right to these rides. We're human beings. And then it got to speaking to the manager, and there are other white people that were going around. And then Assata said her mom was speaking, I think her mom was speaking Spanish, and I think some of the people were Hispanic, and so her mom was able to finesse getting the tickets. And then Assata said, "What did you say?" And her mom said, I told them that I worked in a U.S. embassy, and I will report to the United Nations for the cruelty that you're putting upon me." And then they're saying, "This is going to be a lot of work. We're just going to give you the tickets." So that was pretty funny. It's like, even though Assata went through all this trauma and stuff like that, like, she was able to have some humorous moments. Like, this book is so good. Like, you get drama, you get some comedy. Like, it was everything. And then she was talking about her education experience. So when she was going to school and stuff like that, like in North Carolina, she was in this black school, and the black teachers were pretty much like no nonsense, those type of teachers. And then they eventually moved to New York, I think in Queens. And then they got to they were in an integrated school. And she was one of the only black students that were there. And she was talking about the microaggressions that she faced from white students and white teachers. And she talked about even the history that was taught there. Like, they did plays to commemorate George Washington and Thanksgiving, and revisionist history that the U.S. public education system perpetuates on children, and is not even real history. And Christopher Columbus and all that type of stuff. And Assata, she internalized all that stuff. Like, even to the point to the Pledge of Allegiance. Like, even I myself stood for the Pledge of Allegiance before, said the pledge and all that stuff. And pretty much this delusional patriotism that she internalized, this pro-America approach that you'll be surprised that she internalized that, considering she was focusing on the abolition of the state and the prison system. And she was pretty much talking about, it's even to the point where she talked about how we all internalize this anti-blackness. Like, anti-blackness is not just white people saying the N-word and microaggressions. Like, we even internalize that ourselves. Like, she talked about the fights. Like, I think back when she was in the black school, there were these fights and stuff like that. And she said, like, all the insults that came into fights. Like, she was pretty smart too. Like, she was thinking, I wonder why people are fighting. Like, what is the root to people resulting in fights? And then she said, it's children doing young things, and like, it's petty things like stepping on each other's shoes or stuff like that. Rumors that go around in the school. And then these fights happen, and people say things like, nappy head, I catch your butt, you gonna be dead. You think you black and ugly now. I'm gonna beat you till you purple. Just another Negro to me. I'm gonna show you what I do with Negroes like you. You better shut your big blubber lips. We would call each other jungle bunnies and bush boogies. We would talk about each other's ugly, big lips and flat noses. We would call each other pickaninnies and nappy-haired so-and-sos. So it's internalized anti-blackness that was going on in schools that even today, it's like some black people, they're ashamed of having big lips and nappy hair and stuff that the media says are derogatory and dehumanizing, and we don't even talk about our inner beauties and stuff like that. And Shakur, and she even perpetrated onto her sister about her lips, and she said her sister is like the most beautiful person I've ever known. And she said, we have been completely brainwashed and we didn't even know it. We accepted white value systems and white standards of beauty, and at times we accepted the white man's view of ourselves. We had never been exposed to any other point of view or any other standard of beauty. From when I was a tot, I can remember black people saying, Negroes ain't S. You know how lazy Negroes are. Give a Negro an inch and he'll take a mile. And things like color people time, like all these stereotypes that are perpetuated, not even just from white people, but with black people within ourselves. And to varying degrees, we accepted these statements as true. And to varying degrees, we each made them true within ourselves because we believed them. And then she talked about self-hatred and black beauty, because people didn't know, like, the Black is Beauty movement. That wasn't really a thing until like the 70s. And the Black Panther Party, they helped popularize Black is Beauty, and things like James Brown, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and stuff like that became in the media. So that's the stuff that they had to go through in society back in the 60s. I think this was, no, not the 60s. It was like the 40s, 50s. Like she was still young. And what else? Yeah, she talked about the internalized, how she internalized revisionist history. She said, I didn't know what a fool they made out of me until I grew up and started to read real history. Not only was George Washington probably a big liar, but he had once sold a slave for a keg of rum. And I know George Washington, I think his teeth were made from, they were slaves' teeth. Like, I don't know if that was true, but even stuff like that, it makes you look at people that we were told were role models in history, like things like that. You get into the reality of it all. And Shakur also said, here they had this old cracker slave master who didn't give a damn about black people, and they had me, an unwitting little black child, doing a play in his honor. When George Washington was fighting for freedom in the Revolutionary War, he was fighting for the freedom of whites only, rich whites at that. After the so-called revolution, you couldn't vote unless you were a white man and you owned a plot of land. The Revolutionary War was led by some rich white boys who got tired of paying heavy taxes to the king. It didn't have anything at all to do with freedom, justice, and equality for all. So pretty much talking about the founding of America, like the founders didn't think about the Declaration of Independence. They didn't think of black people in mind when they were writing that, because they themselves were owning slaves, like Thomas Jefferson and all of them. And yeah, pretty much talking about white people and white teachers, and how white teachers, they can't, there's this different white teachers and black students, they have to deal with these different realities of self and stuff like that. And yeah, she talked about all the teachers that she hated, like Mrs. Hoffler, and for example, was like a militaristic white teacher. And she eventually fought Mrs. Hoffler, and then it got to the point where she talked to her mom about Mrs. Hoffler, and Mrs. Hoffler was pretty much racist and stuff like that. And she got moved to another class. And yeah, Shakur also said the usual way that people are taught to think in America is that each subject is in a little compartment and has no relation to any other subject. So she talked about how she learned, how she was her learning style. She liked how she can intersect subjects she talked about the subjects that she liked, like English, art, philosophy, and science, and how all of that is connected within each other. So she thinks it's easier to learn things when they're in the same context rather than separate entities. And I think that makes sense. Because it's easy to just focus on one thing, but if you found a way to dissect each thing and compartmentalize and intellectualize each subject into something that's comprehensive and digestible to other people, like universities and stuff like that, like academia can be accessible when it comes to text. She likes when things are digestible and anything can be digested to fit her learning. And I think every teacher should take that approach. And yeah, she said, for the most part, we receive fragments of unrelated knowledge, and our education follows no logical format or pattern. It is exactly this kind of education that produces people who don't have the ability to think for themselves and who are easily manipulated. So you can just take things as they are and never challenge them. So that's why she likes subjects like philosophy, liberal arts, and stuff like that. And she thinks it's important for people to think for themselves, pretty much. It's important to critical think and have your own opinions when you get information, and actually tackle the information if it's ever been challenged too. And yeah, so that's pretty much the gist of that part. And then and there was this paragraph that stuck out to me. I was supposed to be a child version of a goodwill ambassador, out to prove that black people were not stupid or dirty or smelly or uncultured. I carried out this mission as best I could to show that I was as good as they were. Pretty much what she was raised by her grandma and stuff like that. I never questioned the things they thought were good. White people said classical music was the highest form of music. White people said that ballet was the highest form of dance, and I accepted those things as true. After all, wasn't I as cultured as they were? So she was talking about peer pressure and stuff like that. Like, even that contributes to your thinking. And everything that they wanted, I wanted. If they wanted poodle jackets, I wanted a poodle jacket. If they wanted a Star of David necklace, I wanted a Star of David necklace. If they wanted a Revlon doll, I wanted a Revlon doll. If they could act snobby, then I can act snobby. I saved my culture, my music, my dancing, the richness of black speech for the times when I was with my own people. I remember how those kids would talk about gefilte fish and matzos. It would never have occurred to me to talk about black eyed peas and rice or collard greens and ham hocks. I would never have given them an opportunity to ridicule me. Anyway, half the white people thought that all we ate was grits and watermelon. In many ways, I was living in a double existence. So I was thinking this is like code switching that we know about today, how black people, particularly in workplaces, when they have majority white co-workers, how they have a specific dialect in presenting themselves, and they had to pretty much have a performance for white people, and when they come back home and they go back to the black community, they have this other dialect. They pretty much go back to their authentic and the performance that feels natural to them. So pretty much the realities of being black in the United States, pretty much in a colonial state too. And she was talking about television, how she talked about Leave It to Beaver, Donna Reed, and all these white TV shows. And she was internalizing a lot of anti-blackness there. She was wondering, like, why can't my mom just clean the house on their own? Like, why these white children, they didn't have to do chores. Pretty much the housewife and the domestic pretty much took care of everything. So she's pretty much interrogating with her reality compared to white television, the mainstream television that was going on throughout the day, and how she internalized that. And why my mom couldn't clean in high heels, why she had to wear a head wrap or something like that. Like, she said, I was a puppet and I didn't even know who was pulling the strings. So yeah, it was pretty much an identity crisis that she was going through when she was young. And it was even to the point where she talked about trying to get an Elvis Presley picture when she was in a movie theater. And the Elvis Presley pictures, they were in the white section of the movie theater. And she talked about, and Elvis Presley was seen as the cool thing to get. An Elvis Presley picture was seen as cool. So she was going to the white section, and then everybody in that white section stopped. And they were like, what is she doing here? Does she know? She knows better. She's not supposed to be in. Does she know there's supposed to be a color section? You belong there. And then she was pretty much talking to, I think it was a popcorn seller. She wanted a picture. And then the popcorn seller went to the manager. It's like, white people and managers. And then the manager said, just give her the picture so she wouldn't cause a mess. They didn't want like the media or anything to cause a ruckus. So she eventually got the picture, and she didn't even really like Elvis like that internally, but it's because of society. She eventually got to the Elvis picture, and I think with the spirit that her mom and her grandma instilled in her, she was able to just get the Elvis picture. And yeah, so it was, she went about her business. And yeah, and then she talked about her Aunt Evelyn. Her Aunt Evelyn was like, you'll learn more about her. Like, she's literally a lifesaver for Assata Shakur, because she's her lawyer during her trials. And she talked about her Aunt Evelyn exposed her to museums and stuff like that, because her Aunt Evelyn's a lawyer, so she was able to have opportunities to things that her mother and her grandma weren't able to get. So Assata learned about Picasso and European art. And she was internalizing anti-blackness, like, are black people not good artists or anything like that? But then she learned about the African art, like, that her mom had in the house. So she knew that black people were able to build structures and stuff like that. And it's not white people, they don't have to, like, black people didn't have to build in order for you to value them and stuff like that. And then she was talking about her neighbors. She said this girl named Barbara exposed her to the Catholic Church, and she was pretty much talking about how her fascination with European art made her interested in the Catholic Church. So it ended up not going well. She didn't like the Catholic Church that well. So she was talking about how she when she was trying to get communion in the Catholic Church, she was saying, like, it was like with a godmother. It was like because of godparents. Like, she already has a godmother. And the nun said that your godmother from that is not Catholic. You need a Catholic godmother. And Assata said, this is a waste of time. I'm not continuing with the Catholic Church. And yeah, she was pretty much talking about kids in the neighborhood and the games that they were playing. And they even played cowboys and Indians, and she wanted to be the Indian while people wanted to be the cowboys. So it talks about the history within cowboys and Indians, like the colonizers and the colonized, so indigenous people. And pretty much the socialization that people go through in their youth when it comes to, like, education, when it comes to their community, when it comes to their family, when it comes to church, when it comes to their relationships within society. So that's pretty much what chapter 2 was about. So yeah, so that was it for chapter 2. And then chapter 3 this is when she went from the hospital immediately to prison. So like she's still like recovering from the wounds from the shootout, but they took her to they took her, I forgot which prison what it was, because she was taken to so many prisons, like it was insane. Like she was brought to like was it like 7 different prisons, because she had like so many charges against her. And one of them, she was talking about, she was the experience being in prison. Like she was in a cell with 2 doors. A door of bars was on the inside, and there was a peephole that could barely see through. Like there was a peephole that security guards can see through. Like you're even it's like another level of surveillance when you're in prison. And she said hanging above the sink was the bottom of a pot or pan. It was supposed to serve as a mirror. So it's like, what are you going to do with a pot and pan? Because there's no kitchen, but it's supposed to act as a mirror. But yeah, she was pretty much talking about the cell. And there was this she was talking about her conversation with this security guard. Like they always, security guards and prison guards, they always like, they don't know. It's always because of the order of their higher ups that they're doing this sort of thing. Like they can't like Assata literally had to annoy this prison guards so she can see the warden. And it was this funny altercation with the warden, because the warden her name was Mrs. Butterworth. So this was the funniest part. And Assata was like, why am I here? Why can't I go with the other women prisoners? And why am I stuck here in this prison? Because she was literally in solitary confinement. Like she couldn't do anything. So Butterworth was talking about, you're a cop killer or something like that. And she was pretty much trying to have a conversation. And Assata, and she keeps referring to Assata as JoAnne. So that's a name that Assata, that was her birth name. And she didn't like want to go by that because she didn't know this woman. And she said, Butterworth, is it? What's your first name? And Butterworth said, why, I never tell my girls my first name. And then Assata said, I'm not one of your girls. I'm a grown woman. Why don't you tell people your first name? Are you ashamed of it? And she said, and the Butterworth said, no, JoAnne, I'm not ashamed of my name. It's a matter of respect. I am the warden here. My girls call me Mrs. Butterworth, and I call them by their first names. And then Shakur said, well, you haven't done anything for me to respect you for. I give people respect only when they earn it. Since you won't tell me your first name, then I want you to call me by my last name. You call me either Miss Shakur or Miss Chesimard. And Miss Butterworth said, I'm not going to call you I'm not going to call you by your last name. I'm going to continue calling you JoAnne. And then Assata said, well, I'm going to call you Miss B-word. And whenever I see you, I don't give anybody respect when they don't respect me. And then Mrs. Butterworth laughed, the warden. So that was a funny altercation, even though she was in a state of despair at the time. Because she was going through so many emotions while you're in prison. Like you go through anger, you go through stress, you go through anxiety. And then she was able to meet with her aunt Evelyn with her lawyer, because she's going to be her lawyer, so going to be representing her in her trials that were coming. And then they tried to arrange Assata to do like a speech or something, trying to proclaim her trying to save her reputation and not people slander her name. And she had this speech and had a tape recorder. And this was a famous recording that she did. It was called To My People. It was a famous speech that ended with, it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And she pretty much talked about the history of Black people throughout the country. Like, they called us robbers, but they literally robbed this country. They called us murderers, but they murdered Emmett Till, Medgar Evers, the girls that were in that church bombing. They lynched us and stuff like that. They called us liars, but Nixon literally got through a Watergate scandal and all that stuff. And pretty much it was really empowering. I'll see if I can give a link to the speech in the description box below. And yeah, that was pretty much that part of chapter 3. And then she was talking about being in community with other women prisoners, because she said the women prisoners, they were literally the nicest people. They treated me like a sister. They helped iron my clothes and stuff like that. Like, she was able to have community with the women prisoners. They were nicer than the prison guards based on what the book was giving. And then she was talking about her ability to tease guards and able to mess with their heads and stuff like that, because she was pretty much talking. It's literally, you can see how it went from her grandmother, her mom, instilling this no nonsense take. She was giving that behavior to prison guards and stuff like that. Like, she was standing her ground even when she was incarcerated. And she was talking about being incarcerated with women, because a lot of the people that were incarcerated, they were mothers. And she's talking about, I could see the children waiting outside, looking up at that ugly old building with sad, frustrated faces. So she was talking about children of incarcerated parents and how they go in and see their parents locked up and stuff like that. So that's another reality that some people that were incarcerated had to deal with. And she said, she was asking why a lot of the prisoners were incarcerated. And she said their only crime was competing with state lottery. And she said a lot of them were incarcerated for writing bad checks, for stealing things that were less than $20. So things like petty theft, and also in that the state will literally do anything to punish you for being Black, being a woman, and being poor and stuff like that. So that's literally the system of exploitation too, and system of oppression that that we all know of today. And yeah, she eventually got reunited with Sundiata Aculi, who is I think they eventually caught him during the Turnpike, and then he was incarcerated as well. So she was able to reunite with him, and when she was meeting with Evelyn, and she felt like I got such a sense of liberation just from reuniting with him. And yeah, and then she was when she after her meeting with Evelyn, she was talking about noises that she be hearing in prison. And she was talking about there's this culture of quote unquote prison suicides. And this made me thinking about Sandra Bland, who was found hanged in her cell, and people are thinking that the police or prison guards had something to do with it. And Assata said it's literally common to know something like that is going on, literally. And it's scary because it's literally no one is watching, and they can literally murder you, and they will have no evidence and stuff like that. They would just, the only evidence they have is you being hanged, probably with a blanket or a towel or something. And they say that you committed suicide when it probably was a homicide. And that's pretty much prison culture that Shakur was talking about. And it's not even new, considering the case with Sandra Bland. And then she talked about her friendship with this other female prisoner named Eva. And she said she was the most beautiful person that she ever known. and especially she saw her beauty even though she's dark skinned. So talking about European standards of beauty, well, white beauty standards were talking about dark skinned women, especially fat people, because she weighed I think 300 pounds. So talking about fat phobia, and yeah, she made her Eva helped her redefine what beauty means. And what else was going on? Pretty much. And then Eva, she was incarcerated. I forgot for what it was, but she was considered quote unquote, she was considered psychic, so a sociopath or something. Like, it's literally what the state tells but in reality, she was pretty much probably trying to navigate poverty as the dark-skinned, black, fat woman, and probably in poverty and stuff like that. So, pretty much, talking about being in community with her, and then Eva was eventually taken away to a psychiatric ward. So she was talking about the heartbreak it was to be separated from Eva, because she had such a profound connection with her. And then they talk about the misogyny in prisons. I think I pretty much talked about with Eva, pretty much talking about the misogyny noir that was going on in prisons. And then this goes into Angela Davis, our prison's obsolete, with in context with the 13th Amendment and how slavery is still legal when it's punishment involved. So it's literally yeah, like slavery didn't go away, because there was this prison guard that told her to snap some string beans, and they said that they're not compensating for them. At least your door will be open when you snap these string beans. And Assata said, "I'm not working for free. Slavery is abolished." And the prison guard herself knew this, that slavery is just legal when it's punishment involved. And Assata said, well, sure enough, slavery is legal in prisons, because the 13th Amendment said neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So that explains why a lot of black people and third world people, a lot of people of color, and a lot of women and stuff like that. Forget that. And they're incarcerated and stuff like that. So that literally goes into the prison industrial complex that we know of today. And yeah, Angela Davis said that in Our Prison's Obsolete. So check out that video. It goes into more in depth about the prison industrial complex. And she talked about the idea of black people with guns. And she said, white people's fear of black people with guns will never cease to amaze me. Probably because they think about what they would do were they in our place. So white people have this superiority within themselves, and they probably don't even realize it. They probably internalize that stuff. And it affirmed their fear for black people, because I know with the Black Panther Party, when they were getting more militant, and because they were known to have guns, the NRA were in favor of gun control, because they don't want black people to have guns. So you can even go into today's discourse how the NRA is pretty much for gun deregulation now. And what's next? Oh, she was pretty much going through an unfair trial, because one of the jurors pretty much exposed the whole jury panel that they're just that black people are convicted just for being black. They're saying, yeah, it says right here that I think it was a 20-year-old juror said they're saying they're black, they're guilty. So it pretty much tells you that there is prejudice involved. And not even just that, they were discussing this, the trial outside of the jury circles with outside of the trial itself. And y'all know, if you go to jury duty and stuff like that, that's against the law. And so the jury was dismissed. So apparently they relocated the trial to a more racist county and stuff like that. So it was Morris County instead of Middlesex County. So it was a county with more white people. It wasn't a lot of black people in there. And yeah. And I think that was the end of chapter 3. Yeah, at the end of chapter 3, Shakur said, "An obvious trick, such an obvious ploy to ensure that we didn't receive a fair trial by a jury of our peers that I thought maybe something could be done about it." So yeah, that's literally the reality of black people when they go through the jury system, through the court system, period. And then chapter 4, it goes back into her childhood when she was talking about being in junior high school. So junior high school was when puberty and hormones and all that stuff was going on, and that's when girls were talking about boys and boys were talking about girls, and girls were talking about what's considered a cute boy. That's light-skinned, pretty hair, tall, well-built. So desirability politics and how children even internalize that in junior high school. And they considered these white beauty standards and stuff like that when it comes to having boyfriends. And then there was this boy named Joe in her class. They were pretty close, him and Assata. And he was dark-skinned and didn't fit the height. And I guess he wasn't well-built also. What's considered well-built. And he was dark-skinned and he liked Assata. He went to her house, gave her flowers and stuff like that. And then it came to the point where he asked if she would be his girlfriend. And Assata said no. And then he asked why. And she said, because you're too black and ugly. So she talked about the disgust that was on his face. And he said that was, she never felt so ashamed within herself. And she wished she could make up for it. And she realized that she probably couldn't. The only thing she could do was change herself and better herself. And she has to reconcile with the harm that she caused him. So pretty much, yeah, she said, and although I still care too much about what people thought about me, I always tried hard after that to stand on my own 2 feet, to stand by what I felt and thought, and not just be a robot. I didn't always succeed, but I always tried like hell. Like, this is literally being what being human is about. Like, you have to take accountability within yourself, and you have to realize that you're not perfect, and you have to realize your imperfections and do what you have to do to correct your mistakes. And the other person that you harmed, they don't have to necessarily forgive you. You just got to remember the harm that you caused and try to better yourself within it. And yeah. And then she talked about her experience running away to experience New York. So she had her moments of running away because her mom and her stepdad, they always had these fights when it comes to finances. So imagine being a black family that's poor. So you always debate, fuss about finances. And it got so verbally toxic that Assata had to run away. And then she talked about being spending a night with strangers. Like, she was spending some time with strangers. Like, it was pretty creepy. And she was talking about her neighbor David. And then David got they were the same age. But David talked to his mom, and his mom agreed to let her stay the night and then David got too comfortable with Assata that they got into the topic of sex. and it was crazy because she was afraid to be pregnant because they didn't have like good sex education back then. And he said he grabbed a Vaseline and said, "This Vaseline will help you not get pregnant." And she said, "See, I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb." And she eventually moved, came back home, and then the household became toxic again. And then she ran away and spent some time with this person named Tina, who was also someone, they were the same age. And then Tina taught Assata like the tricks of stealing. Even Tina's mother, because they were poor, so all they could do was steal because they couldn't afford things. They were about to get evicted, and they think stealing was the only way to get this sense of luxury that I think every Black people deserves pleasure, and that's what they did to achieve pleasure. And they taught Assata how to steal earrings from a store. And yeah, that was pretty much Assata's that's like what some people can consider, that's how she radicalized herself when it comes to stealing, because it was like they're literally stealing people because they're literally like the state is stealing people's houses. It's literally the people that are getting stolen from their houses, they see stealing from stores as a discount. They call it the 5-finger discount, which I think was kind of funny. And yeah, let me see if there were yeah, she was talking about running away from New York. Being out there face to face with the raunchiest side of life was like living on a roller coaster. Everything hurling itself at you at breakneck speed. It was one hell of an education, and when I think about it, I was one lucky child. So many things could have happened to me, and almost did. Like, I can't imagine running away. Like, I can't think of the dangers that would happen when you're a Black girl running away. And white girls, when they run away, you even talk about that. White girls, when they run away, the white girls, there's a search for them. There's help from police. But when it's Black girls, they're literally neglected, and there's no help in helping them going back home. You can go back into my Michelle Wallace on Black Macho and this Myth of the Superwomen that I just did, and it talks about that disparity. And yeah, so that was chapter. Oh no, there was more in chapter 4. Oh no, that was it in chapter 4. Yeah, Tina's mother said when they were talking about stealing, she said, "That's right, I steal and my kids steal too. They're trying to take my house from me. They're trying to take everything I got. I got to survive by the best way I know how." So pretty much talking about culture of poverty. And that's how sometimes that's what poor people, they had to take some risk. And some of those risks involve breaking the law and stuff like that in order to achieve luxury. So I think that's how we went from the war on poverty to the war on drugs and law and order that was going on. And you can go into my Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow, that actually delve into that. And yeah, that was chapter 4. And she pretty much talks about how she learned to not delve into peer pressure too, because she was talking about this boy named Tyrone, and he was always fighting, and he was in gang fights, school fights, fights. He was just fighting, and she realized like that's probably an environment that's not safe for her as a Black woman too. So she went back home, and then we're now in chapter 5, and that's when she went from one prison to the next prison, and that next prison was Rikers Island. Like, they didn't even tell her she was going to be moved until that day, so it was hectic for her. And then she was talking about being in solitary confinement. Yeah, and I didn't need to say that. Like, she was in men's prisons when she was in New Jersey. So she was in men's prisons because it was that insane for her. They took her that seriously. They see her as that much of a threat that they put her in men's prisons. And now she's in Rikers Island, which all y'all know Rikers Island is literally the epicenter for prisons. So, and she talked about being going through the process to enter Rikers Island. She talked about how she doesn't remember addresses because she knows the government will use that probably against her for her sake. Like, she didn't even know the address to where she lived before she got incarcerated. She didn't know her mom's address because they see that as a safety mechanism. And that's like probably the importance of confidentiality and keeping things underground in the movements back then. So she didn't remember addresses. And they can't coerce her. They can't into it. And then she talked about the strict search process. So trigger warning, sexual assault, sexual violence. And I explained this on Angela Davis, Our Prisons Obsolete. So it was talking about the internal search that women prisoners go through, where a nurse checks the woman prisoner, and they literally wear a plastic glove and they move through their vagina. And a lot of women prisoners said how painful it was, and they some of it was so painful that it reached their rectum. So it was very traumatic, I can tell. And she was talking about her experience with solitary confinement because she was to herself while she was in confinement, that she forgot to talk and communicate with other people. And yeah, that's literally that system of incarceration, because even when you're in even outside of prison, you can have moments of solitude and you forget to talk to people. Like, that's the importance of interactions with people and being in community. So it's important to not just be in tune with your own self. So you need to communicate with other people. And that enhances with your self-love too, when you spread that love to other people. And what was next? Yeah, she pretty much talked about the prison culture and the lifestyle, how it literally smells. It smells like rats, feet, and stuff like that. And Misery had a smell. It smelled like misery. And the food was gross. Like, the food tasted bad. Like, they had these things called, they called it stew, but it was literally like crumbs that are in liquid. Some sort of liquid that you don't know what it is. So it's even to the point where Assata was mobilizing with other women prisoners to petition for better health, for better food. And and they were able to advocate for themselves in that context, but they got better food, but it wasn't the food that they deserve. But it went back to the previous horrible food conditions that they were under. So pretty much you can talk about the importance of food sovereignty that low income and poor communities go through. And you need to they need access to food. They need access to healthy and sustainable food. So in Baltimore, there are a lot of food deserts. So there are a lot of markets and stores, but there are no grocery stores, no supermarkets. There's no Whole Foods, no Costco's, no Sam's Club, no stuff like that where they can sustain themselves and for a period of time. So that's what prisoners had to go through. And she talked about another meeting when she was meeting with her Aunt Evelyn, and how hard she tried to plea for a postponement because Assata got hit with another trial. So there was these multitude of trials that were coming up upon her face, and her Aunt Evelyn had to look through. Like, it was to the point where her Aunt Evelyn couldn't have the time to make pre-trial motions. So they had to literally stick it to their gut they had literally had to take it for the team in order to go through trial. And it was a trial with another former, I think it was another Black Liberation Army member who his name is Kamal, and talking about with his lawyer, And Kamau, he has a two year old daughter, and it was a moment that they were going through, and the and they and when I forgot what happened, but there was a scuffle that happened in the hallways in the outside of the courtroom, and then Kamau was heckling with the marshals, and then he was eventually pinned to the ground, and Assata tried to help him, and she got pinned to the ground, and then because he was trying to reconnect with his daughter, and then his daughter was screaming, and then Assata was talking about how brutal it was to see Kamau reaching out for his daughter when he was escorted out with the marshals, and pretty much talking about children of incarcerated parents, like what the tragedies they had to go through, the traumas that the state gives them. And yeah, and then they were going through trial again, and then it was what was going on? And then Assata was trying to when the trial for the trial session that was going on for the day was ending, and then Assata was trying to let herself out, and then the marshals were pretty much harassing her, and Kamau was trying to help, and even her aunt Evelyn was trying to stand up for herself, and then it was too much scuffle that Assata and Kamau were banned from the courtroom, and they were put into a freezing room. And then they were even before they were put into the freezing room, there were even other people that were in the courtroom. Like there was this white woman and there were other white people that were trying to stop the marshals, and the marshals even beat them up. And then they were put into the jail and put into the basement or something. They were put into the basement of the courtroom. And this white woman was talking about how she tried to help Assata out and stuff like that. And they arrested them for obstructing justice, quote unquote. And Kamau and Assata were eventually put into the freezing room. And that was pretty much Kamau and them pretty much getting to know each other, trying to establish a connection and a relationship. And then it got into a place of fulfillment and sexual and romantic. So Assata was talking about how she never wanted children because she was like, why bring more black children into this world that will always hate them? And then Kamau was talking about he said, all our children suffer. We can't guarantee our children a future in a world like this. Struggling is the only guarantee our children will ever have for a future. You may never have another chance to have a child. So that made her think, and thinking about carrying on the revolution, because she was also talking about her reunion with another former Black Liberation Army member. I think her name was Simba, and Simba was pregnant when she was incarcerated. So she was talking about the importance. She tried to have a sense of optimism, like this child is going to carry on the revolution. There will be a community to take care of them when this child is born, but it's important that the Black radical tradition carries on through generations to come. And racism won't end in my lifetime, but it's important to keep that humanity going. And that made Assata think about children. And then, it led to a sexual relationship. So I think they were having sex in the freezing room, which was literally a story within itself. So you could think of it as metaphorical. They were in a freezing room, and they were and love brought the warmth back into. Love was bringing the warmth that they needed. And I think that was pretty much makes you think about Black children. Yeah, she said, my mind was screaming, who would take care of my baby? I thought about what Simba had said about our children being our hope for the future. I had never wanted a child. Since I was a teacher, I had always said that the world was too horrible to bring another human being into, and a black child. We see our children frustrated at best, noses pressed against windows looking in, and at worst, we see them die from our drugs or oppression, shot down by police, or wasted away in jail. My head was swimming. What had my mother and grandmother and great-grandmother thought when they brought their babies into this world? What had my ancestors thought when they brought their babies into this world, only to see them flogged and raped, bought and sold? I thought and thought. How many black children are separated from their parents? How many grow up with their grandmothers and grandfathers? Didn't I stay with my grandparents until my mother had finished school and was on their feet? I remembered all the discussions I had had. I'm a revolutionary, I had said. I don't have time to sit at home and make no babies. And then she went into, I'm not going to let oppression take away the need that my desire to carry on the revolution, and to carry on the revolution can be through childbirth. And they had sex, and one thing led to another, and I'll get into her pregnancy and stuff like that, because she does have a daughter. And she said, I'm about to live. I'm going to live as hard as I can and as full as I can until I die. And I'm not letting these parasites, these oppressors, these greedy racist swine make me kill my children and my mind before they're even born. I'm going to live, and I'm going to love Kamau. And if a child comes from that union, I'm going to rejoice, because our children are our futures, and I believe in the future and in the strength and rightness of our struggle. I was ready for whatever happened. I relaxed and let nature take its course. And I found that so beautiful. I found that like literally a radical way of looking at childbirth and bringing children into existence. Because you think about, if it wasn't for pregnancy and childbirth, think about Dr. Martin Luther King wouldn't be alive. Angela Davis wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have Paul Robeson. We wouldn't have Assata Shakur. We wouldn't have a black radical tradition in the first place. So it's a lot of things to think about, especially with that mindset. And then it was, in going back into the trial, it was her and her Aunt Evelyn, they were getting into some arguments, family and stuff, how family be bickering and stuff with each other, that it got to the point where Assata said, I will represent myself. And then Evelyn let her have it. And if you represent yourself, you're recommended to get a legal advisor. So Assata got this advisor who is a known black feminist named Florence Kennedy, Flo Kennedy. I'm gonna look her up to be her legal advisor. So and then they met, and then Florence agreed to be her legal advisor, even though Florence didn't have any criminal law experience, but Assata said, I'm not a criminal. This is a human rights thing. So pretty much got into fighting, standing your own ground and stuff like that. And that's the end of chapter 5. And I'm going to close this video for that. So, so this is a good book to read. I'm gonna get into the next chapters in another video, and it's gonna be for another day. All these videos are not gonna be on the same day. So I'm gonna make another video tomorrow regarding the next few chapters. And thank y'all for reading Assata, an autobiography with me. And stay blessed and take care of yourselves in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic. I can't believe it's still going on, but here we are. But if follow my reading list page at intellectual my reading list page is at Raisin Souls. So that's Raisin, like as in A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry, and Souls by The Souls of Black Folk by W.B. Du Bois. And at Intellectual Albert is my personal page. So follow me on Instagram. And subscribe. And hit the notification bell and all that good stuff with YouTube, what YouTube people say. And yeah, thank y'all, and take care, and enjoy, and stay tuned.